Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for a movie review. I'm a little late on this one, but I just came from watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The final entry of the trilogy of James Gunn's Guardians films for the MCU. After this, we'll be moving forward in helming, at least helming the DC cinematic universe moving forward. And there was definitely some surprises. You know, some things I liked about this, some things I disliked. If you watch my MCU YouTube tier list that I do, moving forward, after phase 4 was wrapped up, I started to make sure that, moving forward, each phase I come back to it and add to the tier listing. But if you want to see my completion, at least not completion, but how I rank the MCU movie, TV show, specials, you can find them all up on there. Not even just the films, TV shows that are now under one banner, like the Marvel Netflix shows that are back in this stuff. The Agents of Shield, Inhumans, etc. So you can check on all that there. The Guardians films, I see. I don't write the jock of the Guardians films like as I don't want to put it that harshly. I mean, people like what they like, but it just I wasn't one of those people that like, oh my god, like the Guardians is like my top 5 favorite MCU films. Personally, I don't put it that freaking high. As I mentioned in my tier listings, when I got to those movies, separating my personal feelings, I just look at it as like an objective, like okay, I'm looking at this movie as a movie on its own merit, and it's high quality stuff. Well, I say high quality, but definitely quality stuff. Including like the Christmas special, and it's like they're good stuff. Definitely better than like the Ant-Man movies by far. But they, some people treat the Ant-Man movies, at least up until the last one, as like palate cleansers after like the, quote unquote deep stuff with like the main things. That gets, somewhat serious. With the Guardians, matter of fact, I think I put all of them on like A tier, but I think the Guardians 2 is probably one of my favorite one, maybe because Kurt Russell's performance. But I think people like revere the first one so much. I think it's because the soundtrack kind of made people love it more than what the narrative probably. Not that the narrative was bad, but it's like, if you take the soundtrack out of it, it's kind of mid as far as like storytelling goes. It's just like, yeah, this is fun people and everything like that. You're following with Peter Quill and his situation with getting abducted by aliens and leaving when his mother passed from cancer and things like that. I mean, it's like, I can't not say it's bad. It's definitely not bad, but it's just like, they're all right films. Now, of course, we all have our own cup of tea kind of MCU projects. People really cannot stand Captain Marvel or Doctor Strange 2. I thoroughly love Doctor Strange 2. I thought Captain Marvel was, did just fine personally, but I don't think they're like crap films like most people like to make them out to be. But as far as this one, which is supposed to be like the more serious one, and it is, uh, it's still another fine Guardians film to me. So, yeah, once again, directed by James Gunn. Chris Pratt reprises his role as Peter Quill. Zoe Saldana, Gamora. Dave Bautista, Drax. Karen Gillan, Nebula. This is kind of funny. I saw on TMZ like a few days ago where, while filming, she had some kind of, I guess, some I guess he's going through the divorce or something like that, and she had a Zoom meeting through like she didn't reschedule, so she had like some kind of Zoom meeting for this kind of court proceeding kind of thing, and she had to she's still in a Nebula makeup somewhat, not fully, but just like the head, so it's kind of funny. Palm Clementif as Mantis, Vin Diesel as Groot, Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon, Will Poulter as Adam Warlock. We finally get Adam Warlock after 2 movies in, when he was teased, and you would think he would have showed up for like Endgame. It would be a heck of a time to bring him up in Endgame or something. Because if you're not familiar with Adam Warlock, he's very up there as far as power. He's very skilled. And again, the comics, he used to be the holder of the Soul Stone, if I remember correctly. I don't read much Adam Warlock. I've seen him pop up a few points here and there over the years. The more prominent moment he had was in the Infinity Gauntlet comic. We got Sean Gunn as Kraglin, and Chukwudi Uji as the High Evolutionary. I know that actor. He was the leader in that little small group that is running this little private spy ring thing under Amanda Waller in Peacekeeper. Linda Cardellini as Lila. And, Linda Cardellini, was already in the MCU as Hawkeye's wife. Nathan Fillion as Master Karja, and Sylvester Stallone as Starkirk Oldguard. I don't read that much Guardians like that, but I know the character was part of the original Guardians of the Galaxy a long time ago in the comics during like the 80s. So anyway, the crew is set up on Nowhere as they made hub, and where is also help being run by Cosmo the Dog. We've seen that quite a bit of what they're building and putting together during the holiday special. And Quill is still being kind of like he's getting drunk. He's not really like doing much of like a leading role like he used to do, because he's still bummed out about the situation with Gamora. Now, the Gamora that we was traveling with, prior to Infinity War, was killed off by Thanos just to get so he can get the Soul Stone, a life for a life, or a soul for a soul. So if you remember from the end game, they did a lot of time traveling, and past Gamora showed up along with past Thanos into the present day, and that's who we are with moving forward. So past Gamora, now present Gamora, doesn't have the experience that the previous one, because of the whole, if you watch the Loki series, there's like well, I want to call it like a true variant, but it's for the sake of the argument, a time variant of Gamora, who's from like was been plucked out of a particular timeline in the MCU and put in present day. And since she never experienced the stuff that she would have experienced from the proper timeline, she is like, you know, you get to see as like a more ruthless Gamora that we never. This is before she like softened a bit after witnessing such atrocities that, or at least, you know, got fed up with Thanos's atrocities, you know, to a point now. And it's like a funny little back and forth with his moment with his moment where Nebula is pointing out that, you know, she was actually the more ruthless one, and yet I'm the one who was treated like the bad guy. It's kind of funny. It's like, yeah, it's you can see why that she always won the fights between her and Nebula, because she was that much more ruthless, and probably why she was such, you know, favored by Thanos above Nebula. So she's now going with the Ravagers and doing her pirate thing, and then come crashing is Adam Warlock, who, if we're still keeping Jonathan Majors, because good on Disney for not just immediately dropping Jonathan Majors, because like from this moment in this video as I'm talking, things seems to be like going Jonathan Majors' way, and so far as like the legal, you know, situation, but not the court of public opinion for the most part, even though clear as day that he is, you know, not like, you know, on that Ezra Miller type of situation. He is typically like definitely like a false accusation kind of situation. So if everything going according to plan, he still be Kang, and I imagine Adam Warlock will show up for the Secret Invasions, Kang Dynasty films, and he might be a good power player, just like, you know, Captain Marvel is a good, like, you know, powerhouse to take on Kang. Especially if you're dealing with like the 3 prime Kangs that's running the show. So he comes crashing in, you know, I maybe it's because of the augments that Nebula's going through, but she really snaps herself back in place every time something gets broken. But she gets bodied by Adam Warlock, so does Drax, and Rocket gets mortally wounded. And it turns out, you know, those golden people were created. You thought it was like a completely separate race of aliens altogether. It turns out they were created by the High Evolutionary. Now, only seen like the High Evolutionary here and there over the years, reading comics. TV show wise, only seen him. I've seen him a little bit in like you know, Spider-Man Unlimited, you know, which was a carry on after the 90s animated series. uh as like the main bad guy there, but he showed up in like the Disney XD's, you know, Marvel's Avengers, or was it Hulk Smash show, one or two here and there. But if you kept up with my Spider Spider-Man comic book reviews, you know, various reviews to prep for the Spider-Verse comic book event, which I just completed. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe and follow me on youtube.com/talkativecarl, as well as my Twitch, twitch.tv/talkativecarl, where I'm streaming video games live, which I'm currently going through Jedi Survivor. Won't get into it tonight because I got too many reviews to cover right now, but I'll be back with it tomorrow. Oh, also, I'm 15 subscribers away from getting to the Hot Ones Challenge video to celebrate the 400 subscriber milestone. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And once we reach that, I will be gathering 10 questions via like Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, whatever, and selecting the best 10 as I'm trying out each of the hot sauces live on air. Anyway, so Adam Mortally Wounds group, and apparently he's not finished. He still has some kind of a bit of like a childlike development, not like a 10-year-old, but it's like in my like in his like mid-teens almost. So Nebula manages to stab him, which doesn't kill him, but definitely takes him out of commission for a brief stint until he eventually escapes. And while they're trying to help Rocket recover, they can't use the typical medical stuff that would normally heal, because Mantis had like a broken arm and it quickly just snaps it right back in place. There's a like an explosive device mechanism attached to Rocket's heart, to where if anybody try to tampers with it, then it automatically self-destruct and kill him. It's already slowly killing. Well, the mortal wounds like slowly killing him. So what they got to do is find out where Rocket came from, find his essentially medical records, and see if whoever did this experiment on him, they'll figure out a way to bypass this this self-destruct device, so they can properly heal him, because they got like 2 days to do so. Oh, and by the way, speaking of Adam Warlock, like I said, he's played by Will Poulter. I swear, because I'm not the only one, because I thought, like, is that Cal Kestis? No, there's two different actors, but I swear they could easily be brothers, because God, they got some kind of similar features. You can't help but confuse the two. I was like, is that Cal Kestis? They just how he's in like one sci-fi thing, now he's in another sci-fi. No, there's two different actors, but I swear it felt like the same person. It usually like that for me when it comes to these two guys. There's probably others, but these two really stick out right now as far as like, wow, you guys could be brothers. Anyway, so they go to this, what do you call it? These Orgo Corp. So they go there, and of course, it turns out that Nebula still kept in touch with Gamora. Didn't tell Quill because he'll just freak out. And they get help from the Ravagers to get like the space suits and other stuff to get inside, but there will be no cavalry. Like, yeah, because you can't afford most of the people like Sylvester Stallone in this group of prior old guard guardians. You only can get them for like a good 10 minutes. So they travel on the surface on this other spot to like just breach a hole inside to get inside the facility. Now this get to the my first point where I really kind of laughed out loud, and it was when Quill thought he was on private comms between him and Gamora, but because it's like the way everything is color coded, and he thinking he's on private line for Gamora, he switched on to open all comms, so everybody's hearing that little private conversation and nobody said nothing. It's like, God, it's incredibly awkward and painful. It was really funny. That I lost it with that. That was really good. So they get inside. They split up, and Gamora is like, oh my God, she is like, literally has like, I won't say no heart, but it's like she is like, okay, we need answers, so I'm gonna hold this woman at gunpoint without giving Quill a chance to like sweet talk her. It's kind of another funny moment where it's like, I just thought you was kind of like a douche. But it turns out that woman, I just literally found out like an hour ago, that woman that Gamora held at gunpoint is Ratcatcher 2 in the James Gunn Suicide Squad movie. There's a lot of James Gunn actors that he worked with that he kind of like had in like a DC thing that's in this Guardians thing. Now, I'm not a huge fan of nepotism. I think that's kind of like, not to say that the actors who are tried and true can't be in stuff, whatever like that, but it's just that just because people, how I put this, I've used this example before. It's the only way I can like really drive home my point. Let's say like Tom Hanks' son Chet Hanks wanted to be in like a Marvel film, like the next Daredevil show. He could easily just get cut in front of the line, essentially, of people who are not well known or just starting out in acting and been busted a hump, making ends meet, working, tables or bartending or whatever like that, and go to these acting classes and auditioning their hearts out, and they all have to wait in line to be the next person to walk in a room and do an audition for this particular role. But Chet Hanks can just go in, and because the people in those private rooms know that he's the son of Tom Hanks, oh, he's a guaranteed but it's in seats kind of thing. So let him, there's nothing wrong with him auditioning, but he needs to probably wait in line like everybody else. He can easily just cut in front of the line, do some kind of audition thing. No, sir, not necessarily means like he's a guarantee per se, but it's just that people want some variety in watching these films. Now, currently, right now, the whole writer strike thing is really tearing up in Los Angeles right now, and deservedly so, because the whole AI generated thing, that's a worry. And the writers and pretty soon the actors, and well, the actors are already protesting with the writers, and pretty soon the directors, because they're gonna probably get affected pretty soon. They are gonna stand in solidarity with each other, because they uh you know, they work very hard to make these TV shows and movies and late night shows to be as good as they are. And like you know, trying to save a buck by cutting, you know, the writers out of the mix, which you need them. It's wrong. The whole thing is just like a very crappy situation, and like hopefully is resolved, and the writers, you know, get what they ask for, because those that using AI to formulate stories and stuff like that is such cheap. It is so cheap, and I hate that idea. I don't want that to happen either. But this whole nepotism thing, it's like you it's like, let's say like Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro is an amazing actor, tried and true actor. Sure, Scorsese can use him as much time as he wants, but every once in a while, I don't want to see something with Robert De Niro for the umpteenth time. Sometimes I might want to see Armor de Armas in something. Maybe sometimes I want to see Jamie Foxx. Hopefully he gets better and start become get on the mends, and he'll, you know, get, you know, I pray for him to be, you know, better. And sometimes I probably want to see Adam Sandler or something, or you know, somebody fresh out the gate in acting. It's just like, you know, you want some variety with your actors. You want somebody square off the, you know, street, you know, that's starting out in acting, and show their chops and become the next big thing. But you can't keep recycling the same actors that you see for a billionth time, just because you know them and their accolades, and oh, you don't want to take a risk with somebody you don't know, because you don't know if they'll be problematic like Ezra Miller. But you know, life is risk, so you know, sometimes you get an Armored Armist, and sometimes you get an Ezra Miller, but it doesn't negate the fact that the quality they bring to the work. But you gotta give it some variety. Can't see, James Gunn's brother every 15 seconds every time we want to go see a James Gunn film. Anyway, so all the while, here's my personal biggest issues so far in the film, because it's been said many times that Dave Bautista doesn't want to do any more Guardians films after this. And all the while I'm thinking, like, okay, like clearly he's gonna die. I mean, that's all I was sitting there waiting on to that moment. I think a lot of people was waiting on to that moment. And I'm just gonna cut it right here. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. None of the Guardians cast dies off, which is actually is pretty shocking, because there's been plenty of times that you think it's either Rocket or Drax, or even there was a moment with Quill thinking he might die. And I was like, wow, somebody's gonna get off. Nobody does. It was like, wow, kudos to James Gunn, and by extension the studios, because here's my personal take on this. I don't know how you guys will feel about it, but just because an actor doesn't want to do a particular role anymore does not necessarily mean that the film has to just automatically kill this person off outright. You can just have, like, like Captain America is like, he could just retire. He doesn't have to come back. You don't have to use him, and I think everybody will be, pretty understanding on the situation. He can just be, next time you see like an Avengers film and you see most of the other Guardians, but Drax not there. Oh, he gets like, oh, he found a wife. He's living, with them on a different planet far from here. Don't even worry about it. He's done. So no more Drax, and I think that's perfectly fine and fair. But you don't need to kill him off this guarantee. Nobody be bitching that, oh, why Drax just can't show up in this one? It'd be so cool to have Drax just come up, and like, no, he's done. Let it be. Yet, like, 30 other superheroes to be involved in that stuff. You're down one man. So it's not 31, it's 30 now. So I was pleasant surprise, because Drax got shot in the gut by this big rifle from the security guard. Once in the front, and then another guard shot him in the back, and then Nebula gets shot, and she coughing up blood. And I was like, oh my god, this is all the while having this fun little kind of fighting sequence. And they did get their the data with Rocket's records. And here's my first big issue with the film, and not necessarily is wrong to put it in, but sometimes things kind of, you beating a dead horse with a particular thing that you're harping on. Quill is super simping for Gamora. I mean, it wouldn't simp for Gamora, but or Zoe Saldana by extension. But it's just like, you said it yourself, this isn't, and she pointed out plenty of times, she isn't the Gamora that you palled around with years ago. This is like a Gamora that never would have met you, so she didn't have those experiences. She never got that chance to experience those moments that she would have done from the previous timeline. And it's like he's butthurt about it. And it's like, yeah, she's behaving like a dick, but she's behaving like she was prior to meeting you in the previous timeline. So it's like he's like in his feelings that in the first film he does behave like a man child, but after going through thing with like Ego, his father, and then after experiencing the situation in Infinity War and the snap, and then coming back and fighting off Thanos and his forces, and then with those situation with meeting his idol Kevin Bacon in the Christmas special, there should be some level of maturity by this point, some show of level understanding. He definitely matured, but it's like he's behaving like a baby. Like, Gamora doesn't remember me. It's like, why don't you remember the good times we have? She doesn't. Let it. You're gonna have to drop it, or at least try to reestablish like a new, fresh start with her. To start over with, spending time with her and romancing her a little bit, and reestablish some feelings. But then again, this is a timeline where she's being told that she had a thing with him, but now it's kind of like, imagine like if you're married to your significant other right now, and like something happened where timelines get wonky, and you meet up with her way prior to the natural course of the time where you're supposed to have met up with each other, and it's like, like, let's say like your husband and your wife, you met up with her, in her mid-teens instead of her mid-30s, and her mid-20s, she's behaving like a radically different person and not as mature and on the same wavelength as you when you would met prior. Entirely different person. We all are different people than we were from like 30s, 40s, 20s, early teens, even toddlers. We all have different stages of our life that we we're at, depending on our experiences. So you met your wife, you met through the course of timeline, you met her during your 30s, and then established a relationship. But then you got timey-wimey, then you met her in her 20s, and you're telling her how this life you led with her, and all the things that you experienced, blah blah blah, and she keep telling you like, yeah, I don't see any life with you, dude. It's like, you're not my type, blah blah blah. She didn't get those experiences yet. She hasn't reached that point, so there'll be a nice fresh start and you could have gone with that, but they kept harping on that. Also, though, Cosmo on Nowhere with, I keep just calling him this James Gunn's brother. James Gunn's brother, Sean, the new Yondu, after he was trying to test out the whistle stick thing, and he's not getting it just right, and Cosmo kind of showed him up by using her telekinesis. Even though Cosmo in other iterations is a male dog, here she's a female dog. But Cosmo lifted a small pebble and whipped it all over the place in very accurate degree, and then Sean Gunn called her a bad dog, and of course dogs like to be like be good dogs. So every time we come back to these two, it's like I feel bad because he's not taking it back. I'm a good dog, and everybody's like, just tell her that she's a good dog so you can drop this. Like, nope, he's a bad dog. And of course, everybody and their mama know where this is gonna be leading to. That these two gonna have like a thing at the end where, oh, you're a good dog because you helped me out in this situation. We see that coming, and they do when a monster start, high evolutionaries forces start breaking into Nowhere, and they team up to stop this one beast. And he says, oh, you're a good dog, and it's sweet, but it's predictable sweet. So after Groot crashes the ship into the facility, and all the Guardians are hopping on board, they realize the data they receive isn't complete, or at least doesn't have the necessary information they need to bypass the kill switch inside Rocket to neutralize it. They gotta find this guy that Peter happens to bump into at the corporation. There's this bald guy with this kind of like a metal computer thing on the side of his head. So they gotta go to Counter Earth, where the High Evolutionary put his humanoid animal hybrids, or not hybrids, but just humanoid animals he created onto this Earth because he's obsessed with perfection. So here's another thing, because the actor who plays the High Evolutionary, I remember a handful of days ago where he was in an interview stating that he played villains before, but he's feeling like very horrible that once he played his particular scenes, he saw the videos in post when they kind of like insert the animals in the shots where he's supposed to be doing experimentations. He felt sick because, like, oh my god, it's like people gonna hate me because like I'm it's cruelty to animals. There's a fair bit of animal cruelty in this film. Not super graphic, but there's a bit of body horror that you gotta be very prepared for. And you got these this rabbit on these like robotic spider legs. It's kind of freaked me the heck out. And walrus on back wheels, and this otter with robotic arms. It's like intense. And this is where like we get flashbacks while Rock is in his coma. You get flashbacks in his time, from his early origins that we never really got much on, except for like a brief line from Guardians 1. And it gets it does get intense depending on your ability to stomach certain things. I kind of wish because you go back and forth between the present and these flashbacks, and I kind of wish they just focus this flashback all in just one big scene, so we can, you know, we get the gist of it, so that we can maintain on the present day moving forward. Because I hate to use the word, just it felt whiplash. It wasn't like that. I think it's paced pretty decently, but I think you can still achieve the same thing if you just kind of like make it all in one particular scene. Not necessarily condense it where you have to cut out a few things, but it's like the times that you flash back, you can just make it one continuous moment. And then I watched Dan Merle's review on this film, and I think the way he put it is where if you did it that way, put it in this particular moment after they get Rocket's data from that corporation, and before they get to the Counter Earth. Between that time, somewhere between that time, you insert this extended flashback, so we'll get what we need and how horrific the High Evolutionary is, and then you can maintain, like, focus on the main story. Oh, and I forgot, I was, you know, building up about, like, in the Spider-Man comics that I was reviewing, in my Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman comic book review, which you can check out on the channel. Sorry, it took me all along this time to get back to that point. It happens with me sometimes. But the High Evolutionary had just, not like a speaking thing, but it was like, for some reason, I pointed out in my Jessica Drew Spider-Woman review, is that, you know, when she was young, she's, you know, looking out her horizon, and she's seeing this big figure, and it's the High Evolutionary in his comic book kind of look, because it's kind of like just like a pink, purplish kind of outfit and full on mask thing. But you only see it. It's never explained why she saw the High Evolutionary. It had nothing to do with this Jessica Drew origin story at all. So that was just weird to me. You know, she's a little kid, and High Evolutionary isn't a kind of like established entity in the MC, or not MCU, but the Marvel comics in her particular point in time yet. And he mostly showed up to fight off the Avengers or like Inhumans, if I remember correctly. And like I said, he's obsessed with just perfection and gene splicing and making, like, you know, animal humanoid things just to, like, oh, this is perfect. And of course, he just never see anything but imperfections all around that he has to constantly try to correct, quote unquote. So yeah, that's the one thing I probably agree with Dan Merle. Is like, you kind of fixed it. Could just condensed it into one particular scene without that back and forth. So they go to Counter Earth to try to find this guy, and they meet up with this bat lady who's speaking in a language that none of them speak, and she directs them to the Citadel where the High Evolutionary stays. And it's like, when you're entering this planet, and it's like you happen to be in a particular city where it's like, when you land on the planet, you just happen to land on a city where, because clearly it's supposed to be like New York, but you know, it's like set out to be where he's the High Evolutionary is like the Statue of Liberty, and he's kind of like their god and everything like that. You could have let it on like a Counter Earth version of Europe instead of the one in New York, their fake New York, where his Citadel is. It's just very, you know, convenient that you happen to pick the right country, let alone city. But anyway, as you coming in, it's literally off in the freaking horizon. There's this big pinkish pyramid that, you know, I guess you think it might be a mountain, but it's like, I don't know. It seems fairly obvious. So here's another thing where it's like a joke, kind of really kind of, I think it's like the polar opposite of what you get in Thor 4, where it's like constant barrage of jokes, where this one, the jokes is paced better, but it's just like, I don't know, it's just like there's moments where you probably laugh, you know, throughout this film's moments, but it's just like maybe 20 to 30% at best the jokes might land with people in general. But I don't know, it's like, at least the theater I was in, I don't know about the day 1 or day 2 showing, but I don't know how many people are actually like just busting up laughing, you know, all through the theater from these jokes. You know, you get, you know, like I said, a good 20 to 30% of those jokes actually landing and being like a laugh riot. Here's when, like, you know, Nebula is trying to get inside this car that Peter can't really drive because he's been, you know, abducted since he was 8, so he never learned how to drive. So he's telling her to like push the button on this 80s style car, and it's like this joke going. It's like I want to say it's 5 minutes exactly, but it felt like it was a good 5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. I think it was like a good 2 to 3 minutes of this opening this car door situation, and they dropped the, you know, F-bomb at this part, like, just get in the fucking car, kind of situation. I was like, I gotta open, what now? Just get in the fucking car. And I was like, there was some laughs in the theater, in my theater, here and there, and it's just like, I don't know, man. It's like you know, the Guardians films does tend to be funny, but it's just that maybe it's just James Gunn style of comedy isn't my speed. And that's how I felt during like the Suicide Squad and Guardians 2. Even though I like Guardians 2, you know, a little bit better. You know, I wasn't really laughing at the same stuff that everybody else was laughing at. And I think we all been there. But this one really was like, you know, this like, I probably laughed out loud for maybe 3, maybe 4 times throughout this entire, like, what was it, you know, nearly 2-hour runtime. How long was the movie? Runtime 150 minutes, so a little over an hour and a half. No, it's actually 2 hours and 30 minutes. It actually is 2 hours and 30 minutes. So wow, like 2 hours and 30 minutes of this film, and it's like, you know, 20 to 30% of that is actually decently laughs. Anyway, they go on this counter Earth, you know, Gamora, Groot, and I keep wanting to say Gamora, Nebula, Groot, and Star-Lord go to the Citadel. Since Nebula's, you know, part of her body's machinery, so it's all weaponry, Groot and Star-Lord is the only ones that have to walk inside. And this, you know, this is another moment where I kind of chuckled. It wasn't like a full-on laugh, but I kind of chuckled where, you know, the High Evolutionary just like, you know, like he's busy on the computer really quick. And you think it's gonna be like a split second. He just put his finger up like 1 second, and of course, you know, Star-Lord's just waiting patiently. He thought, okay, fine. But it's like, it probably like was way longer than a minute, and he probably like, okay, after this, like, I don't have time for this crap, because, you know, there's a time crunch with Rocket, and of course, High Evolutionary, who created those gold people, who is by extension created Adam Warlock, and a bunch of other species, it turns out. He sent out, you know, them to collect Rocket, because Rocket, if you looked in like the flashback, which is, I think, like it's crucial all in all, but I think like the most crucial ones is like 2 of them. His relationship with his old friends, who, you know, doesn't make it throughout this. They end up getting shot and killed. But also learning about, you know, Rocket's, you know, high intelligence, and why High Evolutionary want him so badly, because high evolutionary wanted perfection, but he got a warped sense of perfection. Because sure, Rocket has like the intelligence because he figured out a way to make his machines work to make non-violent, animal humanoids, and because of some wiring or couplings or whatever in these machines that Rocket at a very young age figured out almost immediately. And High Evolutionary just can't handle it because he made something that was better than him, and he already thinks himself as God. And if you go with by Christianity kind of situation where like like with Lucifer, got jealous because God created humans, it's supposed to be like better than his angels to a degree. He couldn't handle it, so you can look at it like that, where like high evolutionary could not handle the fact that something he created, figure out something that he could not figure out because he's supposed to be God. But he also needed because he's planning on wiping out, the civilization on his counter Earth, which he does. It's almost like watching Alderaan blow up while you're in the middle of in the city or on the planet itself. It was intense. Lots of families, and civilization died on this planet, and that is like volcanic eruptions and everything like that. It was intense. I'm like, oh my god. So that's probably, I argue that's probably the more I wouldn't say necessarily graphic, the most like horrific way to see people go. And even like the most of the gold people that arrived here to send Adam Warlock to go after Rocket because they want to be in good favor with their master High Evolutionary. But the mother of Adam Warlock, dies, and which leaves only Adam Warlock. And and I gotta bring up about these guards at the facility that basically is Bebop and Rocksteady. It's basically Bebop and Rocksteady. It's like, oh my god. It's like, that's all I can think, because one of them was actually a pig and the other isn't a rhinoceros, but they had like a pointy nose kind of situation, so it might as well be Bebop and Rocksteady. I thought that was pretty funny, at least to me, because that's the thing I thought to myself, and I flabbergasted that nobody in the film, like Peter, especially Peter, should have made a Bebop and Rocksteady joke with these two. But anyway, after and it's funny as like Evolutionary's about to go on this little villain monologue situation, and Peter just like because like, God, I don't care about your thing, you want to rule the dominate the galaxy, blah blah blah. Just like, I don't care. It's like he just points out like, I don't want to rule the galaxy. I just want perfection. And they cause a distraction. And it's a cool moment where Groot just pulls out all these guns underneath his like body, and they crash out the window. Groot makes this kind of like gliding wings thing, and kills the bald-headed dude in the process. Is falling out of the building as it's rising up into space, and this planet is erupting. And Quill managed to get the data from his memory storage, and it helps like revive Rocket after he has this kind of like a moment in the afterlife talking with his friends, and he comes back to life. But Nebula, Drax, and Mantis are on the facility, and they come across these children that no doubt was going to be experimented on by High Evolutionary. And they contact, you know, Sean Gunn and the other people on Nowhere to come in and provide backup as they're trying to get people off it, as you know, the entire place is going down. Here's as I get like the part of my favorite moment out of the entire film, the Guardians of the Galaxy's version of a hallway fight, and it was like a cool cinematic moment. Freaking loved it. You know, just, you know, awesome, where you get like, Peter, Rocket, Groot, Nebula, Gamora, Drax, Mantis, all like just like doing their unique thing and working in such synergy, and it was just like nonstop awesome. Perfectly well done. Somebody's been paying attention to Daredevil. Clearly. Every time I see that, because Daredevil started this, and it's like every time I see like a one-shot thing, somebody who probably worked on that show got involved in a particular thing like this. So the High Evolutionary, at this point, I think everybody's in agreement, where the entire of the third act is just this guy just yelling, just like going freaking nuts and just yelling. It's like all just yells, and it's like, it's probably the way the direction, or just how, like, you know, the actor probably went with it and James Gunn left it in because he thought it was great. But it's just like, from what I've been taught when it comes to acting, sure, you go in all 100%, and it'd be easier for the director to tell you how far to pull back. It's hard for a director, if you're going at 50 or 40%, it's hard for a director to tell you how to go beyond that. It's easier for them to tell you how to pull it back. So that's why you always gotta give like a 100% in a performance when you choosing a particular way to carry on a character and how he or she would behave in a particular situation. But I don't think James Gunn told him to pull it back at all. This dude is just like all yells, and it's like he's almost like about to pull an aneurysm. So there's also more with Drax, and Drax has like a pretty decent arc where it's like, you know, because Mantis points out to Nebula, who's, as Mantis puts it, only care about like how useful somebody is, and not caring about, you know, other people's like, you know, feelings in a particular situation, and bossy and whatever. And Drax, managed to speak with these kids that Mantis and Nebula could not reach them because they speak in a language they don't know, but Drax knows. And Nebula asked him, it's like, why don't you tell me you know how to speak the language? You never asked me. Because I like that moment where it's like, you treat Drax like just like a dumb muscle, and he is more to him than that. Sure, he doesn't his species doesn't understand metaphors and things like that, but if you really took the time and probably appreciate your teammates more than what's on the surface, you might be pleasantly surprised. And Mantis, I'm glad they kind of carried over what happened in the Christmas special over to here, where they haven't forgotten the fact that she is Star-Lord's half sister. But she's trying to get him out of his. She's probably the only. I won't say the only one, but she's very dedicated to try to get Star-Lord out of his funk when it comes to Gamora, and stating that even by extension herself, that you kept hopping to one lily pad to a lily pad, and you gotta, just at this point in time, you gotta figure out a way to swim. Which kind of, books end with Quill by the end of the film, when he finally goes back home to Earth, which you would think after the events of Endgame, he probably was just stayed on Earth, see what's going on, what he missed, go back to where family he might have left, and let him know how he is and what's he been doing and blah 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 before he goes back to space or something like that. But in the end of the film, you know, he goes back to Earth and goes visit his grandfather, who happens to still be alive. Because he was always, I guess, afraid to go back, because his last image of his grandfather was him yelling at 8-year-old Peter Quill after his mom died, and he just thinks like he blames him for his mother's death or somehow. But Mantis points out to him like you know he was grieving too, just probably at that moment couldn't express it properly. But kind of interesting to see how Peter Quill will be on his time on Earth and kind of adventures he'll have and stuff like that, because that's something like there's only, I think it was like a tie, I won't say a tie-in, but I was reading a particular comic a long time ago, and Peter Quill was on Earth, and he came in as like a guest character. He was helping run this bar, and he was helping stopping some kind of crime on the streets and something like that. And I was like, wow, it's like I rarely, if at all, see Star-Lord on Earth tangling with like superhero stuff like others that's constantly are on Earth do. So it's like a unique kind of thing that I really want to explore. Star Wars always in space. Let him have some adventures on Earth for a while and see how he copes and deals with modern life. Because he's an 80s kid, so like all the stuff that he knows, definitely like very Steve Rogers-esque, where he's coming back to a modern day situation and reacquainting himself with new technology and stuff like that. Which, by the way, speaking of technology, they got like medical stuff to help these little patches things that you wrap around wounds and broken limbs and fix things right up really quick. You don't bring that stuff to Earth that you think might be useful. All this technology, and it's like, why don't they bring this stuff to Earth? So advanced medical tech that could be very beneficial to humanity. Groot is just being Groot. There's not really much of an arc with him. I do gotta say, it was so freaking cringy. Where like at the end you hear like Groot talking like, "I love you guys," and it's like, ugh. It kind of reminds me. I don't know why. I do know why, but it's like I haven't thought about this in such a long time. Where if you remember, where like Pikachu actually spoke words to Ash. I'm not sure if this was some kind of, I never know the full context, but I think it was some kind of dream sequence, maybe, I'm not sure. But you hear Pikachu actually speak like, "Because I love you," and it felt so wrong and awkward, and that's how I felt with this. Some people thought it probably been better if he just said family, and maybe that would have worked better because of the inside joke people at this point have with Vin Diesel, with his constant Fast Furious movies, and it's like he's just a and I say a stereotype, but just a parody of itself at this point. Yeah, Groot was just being Groot. It's not really much of an arc with him. I think you got the first two. Well, I think like given like what happened at the end of the first movie leading into Infinity War, he had like a pretty decent arc from like sacrificing himself, reviving as like a twig thing and baby Groot, then teenage Groot dying in Infinity War, then coming back, and now he's 20-something-year-old Groot. Anyway, the High Evolutionary is dealing with like a mutiny at this point, because everybody's like, okay, you are super obsessed with this one animal that you're putting everybody else in danger. And of course, he does this one big massive yell, screaming at everybody, and his massive, I don't know what powers he's supposed to have. I don't know, it's supposed to be some kind of low level telekinesis or something. I'm not sure. Or just tech that uses like because it might be just tech, because somehow like Rocky managed to like switch something off and he can't really use it to like cause like a force push or anything like that. So as everybody's getting, you know, children and eventually the animals that's still in cages off the rig and onto nowhere, I like this one because I'm going through a lot of the X-Men related stuff for reviews, like the movies, TV shows, and the comics. And I mentioned plenty of times in the movies where they kind of focus too heavily on just a few people out of the entire X-Men lineup, like Wolverine, Jean Grey, Magneto, and Professor X. And you got like a plethora of people that you can probably put more focus into. Here, I think the Guardians, I gotta give credit. It's like the first movie is about this team coming together. You learn a little bit from, you know, about each of their backstories here and there, but not like a full-blown explanation. Part 2 is where you learn a little bit more about, like, you know, Peter and his, you know, parental lineage. And, you know, the Christmas special, you learn a little bit about like Mantis. In Guardians 3, you get a little bit more focus with Rocket. Even though another problem I have is where you kind of like have Rocket taken out for the bulk of the movie until like you know you're well in the third act. So it's like, wow, you took this guy, you know, significantly out of commission for a movie that's supposed to be all about him. But I like the one where it's like Rocket finally is really, because I can't wait for Cinema Therapy to really talk about this. I bet you they'll talk about this because this guy, in a sense, is a tormentor, and Rocket is confronting his tormentor, like, who done physical and psychological harm to this guy, some severe stuff. And finally, he, he calls him by his little code name, and it's like, my name is Rocket Raccoon. And it's like, you know, it's like finally owning the fact that he's a freaking raccoon, but he's just like a thing that he just want to ignore. It's possibly because, you know, that forces him to remember that he was a normal raccoon until the high evolutionary experimented on. It's something that he doesn't want to relive. But it's like an awesome way, like Rocket, you know, takes on the bad guy. This is like I want to say he's not like a main character, but he's, you know, not necessarily like Star-Lord, because Star-Lord is probably like the main focus. He's the leader. But it's the same way. It's like if you're looking at the X-Men and Cyclops is the leader, but it's a rogue story, or I should say, like, maybe like the first one was kind of like a rogue story, but let's say, like, you know, it's a Storm story, and it's a Storm adversary that she's, you know, want to get first licks in. But I also want to point out, like, because people point out how like horrific, you know, this high evolutionary is with the experimentations and everything like that, and some people say, like, you haven't seen something like that before in these films. Well, I argue, I think Ajax, aka Francis from the first Deadpool movie, is not too dissimilar to what high evolutionary is, because they both experimented, you know, on well, one's on people and mutants and the other is on animals, and to try to one's, you know, trying to achieve perfection, the other trying to create super slaves. So I can't help but think about, wow, he's kind of like Francis in a way. So I imagine like Rocket and Devil will have a lot in common as far as like backstory goes. So all the Guardians team up to finally take down the high evolutionary and like manage to kill him. But before he dies, Gamora peels off his face that was like kind of stretched out, because in the past, Rocket, after witnessing high evolutionary kill his friends, he went berserk and scratched off his face. Now it's almost like, you know, Red Skull level kind of thing, which, you know, close to Marvel and Disney, where they don't shy away from certain moments that deserve to be kind of like, you know, gruesome in a way. I think like Moon Knight kind of started this, and it kind of really, amped up with Doctor Strange 2, but kind of like, I think maintain it, albeit maybe slightly, pulled it back ever so slightly. When you see, because I didn't think they actually were going to show it, but they actually show his messed up face. It's almost like just a skull, almost like Red Skull level stuff, like the way Red Skull probably should have looked like. So he dies on the exploding ship, and Quill, like I don't want to say like an idiot. Of course, it's his mom's little cassette thing, but he drops it. He goes back running for it, and as he coming back, and he's trying to jump off the thing, and he barely makes it towards Nowhere ship, and another kind of like intense thing to see, where almost like Yondu, where he's freezing up in space and it's kind of puffing up because there's no oxygen in space. That wouldn't actually happen. Adam Warlock, because even though he has cool moments, he doesn't really add much to the film, but not anything with some kind of nuance to it, because he's almost like a childlike mind in a way. He he's able to survive in space, so he flies out, gathers Quill, and brings him back to Nowhere ship, where he managed to make it out of that. A lot of these people go through these kind of like very morally wounding kind of circumstances, and after a quick nap, they managed to recover fairly quickly. I was like, wow. But everybody's starting to go their separate ways. The Guardians, I won't say they disbanded, but the original team that disbanded. Peter's going back to Earth to, trying to find himself, reconnect with it, family he has left. Mantis leaves to try to figure out, because she want to know what she's about without the Guardians or without Ego, and what is her story. Gamora goes back to the Ravagers. Nebula and Drax stay on Nowhere, try to help find these animals and children some homes. And one of the kids there, I guess, turns out to be this Marvel character Quasar, from what I'm understanding from online comments. Did not even know that. She's just some random kid. It's kind of like the same way at the Tony's funeral, you saw that random kid, you don't even know where he's from until the internet had to tell you. And it's like, wow, this, you kind of like just pulled, you didn't really need the kid to be there. You didn't establish it's supposed to be Quasar with no name, no kind of indication or whatever. It just completely just pulled it out of your ass. And it's like, who is this kid? You didn't really need to add that, because you don't, you gotta be extremely deep cut, because I know the name of Quasar. I haven't read any Quasar stuff in the comics. It's even lesser known than the Guardians of the Galaxy. That's how deep cut of a character that is. And Rocket now is the new leader of the Guardians, with Groot, Sean Gunn, Cosmo, Adam Warlock, and the Quasar girl. And of course the Stinger, which I thought would be something leading with the what's going on with Kang, but I imagine they did probably have something with Kang, but probably took it out because of the whole Jonathan Majors situation. They don't know what's going on, so they kind of leave it be for now. Even though he's supposed to be showing up in Loki season 2, they already shot that, so that's still going to be a thing. Like I said, hopefully, like Jonathan Majors can get back in the swing of things, because obviously things are working in his favor. But court of public opinion, which I imagine will blow over, because news cycles, the way they work, there's gonna be another huge scandal with somebody else, and they're gonna forget about Jonathan Majors in no time. So right now the Stinger is just, Star-Lord just eating a bowl of cereal loudly, I might add. No one wants to hear what's going on in Peter Quill's mouth. So, his grandfather's reading the newspaper with a headline about what went on in the Christmas special with, Kevin Bacon being abducted by aliens. even though, why is that still in the news cycle, even though they happen during Christmas? And clearly, you know, there's no snow around, so it's not Christmas anymore. So why is it still like a headline? And the title reads like, the legendary Star-Lord will be back. And not like Guardians of the Galaxy, just Star-Lord. So I imagine everybody else will be back but Drax. But that was Guardians 3. It's fine. I mean, I think everybody's in consensus is that it's not like the grand, you know, scale movie like Infinity War or something like that. It's just like, by and large, people, you know, enjoyed it, but they primarily went to see it because it's James Gunn's last film before heading off to the DC. But yeah, like I enjoyed it, and like, you know, I definitely recommend going to the theater to see it. It's, you know, fine, well worth your time. But it's not, don't expect it to be on something on like Endgame or even like, I think it's fair to say it's on this probably the same level roughly as Spider-Man Far From Home, roughly around that. It's definitely better than like, you know, Ant-Man Quantum Mania, and definitely better than Thor Love and Thunder. So you can get a clear picture on the quality that you should be expecting. But anyway, that's my review on that. Please leave a comment and let me know what you thought of Guardians 3. Yeah, and pretty soon I'll be going into my Mother's Day movie review, Monster-in-Law. I wanted to do that a couple of days ago, but something came up, so I could not you know, get it done a couple of days ago like I intended to, but I'm going to do it here. It's not going to probably take me that long anyway. But, you know, there's only 3 movies I want to do this month for the Mother's Day month. So, anyway, I will see you guys in a few minutes. Take care, be well, follow me, links in the description below, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.